Okay, thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. Certainly, thank you to Miriam Friedman for continuing to organize this, and thank you to all the people who submitted questions. There's actually not that many questions tonight, but we've been doing this enough times that, thank God, I'm pretty confident that through the answers to the few questions, we'll probably spur another some more rounds of questions. So without further ado, are candles that are small and cheap but made for Chanukah okay to use? They usually don't last 30 minutes, but they potentially should be able to do so. So just to rephrase the question for a moment, what are the requirements for a candle used for Chanukah? Statement number one, it doesn't matter if they were made with Chanukah in mind. Whereas some mitzvos, a mitzvah item maybe has to be made with that mitzvah in mind or this mitzvah in mind. Chanukah candles, we just need candles. They could be made as Shabbos candles. They could be made as birthday candles. They could be made as all kinds of candles. It doesn't matter to us. But what very much matters to us is it has to be that the candle is able to burn for a half hour. Now, and that's based on the Gemara. The Gemara basically says that that's the period of time that when people are walking home from the marketplace, at least at times of the Gemara, it was normally like a half-hour window, because the nature of the mitzvah is Pirsum Nisa, to publicize the miracle. Even though the nature of the publicizing of the miracle has changed now. Now, I'm sure we'll touch on this later tonight, but now the focus of publicizing the miracle is more for the members of the household. The bottom line is we still pattern the rules of the mitzvah, generally speaking, after how it was in the times of the Gemara, which was all about that people coming home from the marketplace should see the candles of your menorah. And there was like a half-hour time frame that people were generally coming home from the marketplace. I guess it was their version of rush hour, but maybe not a full hour. So, at least according to one view in the Rishonim, the Gemara is telling us that the mitzvah of Chanukah candles are supposed to burn for a half hour. So it doesn't matter what they're made for, but what matters a lot is that they're going to burn for a half hour. If you're not confident if they're going to burn for a half hour, it's not such a good idea to use those candles. Okay. Now I wanna elaborate on that a little bit. So what does that mean? What am I saying? Am I saying that you have to sit there for a half hour staring at the candles to make sure they burn? No. If the candles should burn for a half hour, then whether or not they end up burning for a half hour is irrelevant in terms of being Yotzei the mitzvah. I hope that made sense. But if I don't know, if it's anybody's guess, will it burn for 28 minutes or 35 minutes, then that's not a good candle to use for the menorah. But if it's a candle that, if left to its own devices, it should burn for a half hour. But who knows? Maybe somebody will come in and rush back and forth or something like that. Or maybe there'll be some gust of wind or who knows what. It's not my problem. I also should mention that it is an issue if I position the menorah in a place where it's very likely the candles could burn out. Every now and then this comes up, that if people put the menorah right by a vent, you know what I mean? So like imagine this time of year, so there's regularly hot air coming through the vent and rushes of hot air coming through the vent. So if you find that when you put your menorah there, regularly the candles burn out, it's not so clear to me that you're Yotzei, because it might be really like a given that the candles will probably go out within the half hour. But if in normal circumstances your candle should burn for a half hour, you're confident that your candle should burn for a half hour, then you could just light it and walk away. Also want to make one more comment about the candles, and that is, my guess is we'll touch on this later tonight, but it's relevant at this point. The basic mitzvah of Chanukah is to light one candle per night. For the record, the basic mitzvah of Chanukah is for one member of the household to light one candle per night. Everything else we do is reinforcing it, and it's nicer levels based on the Gemara. So it's a nice thing to light to reflect the number of nights it is. If it's the third night of Chanukah, it's a nice thing that you should light 3 candles as opposed to 1 candle. And if there's 4 members of the family, it's a nice thing that each one should light 3 candles. So all of a sudden you're at 12 candles. But it's worthwhile to note that the basic mitzvah is one candle, which means, let's say a person has 2 boxes of Chanukah candles, and they have 1 box of Chanukah candles that they consider very reliable, and 1 box of Chanukah candles that they consider not as much so. Okay, and they realize, oh gosh, I don't have so many of the reliable candles left. If they even have 1 candle that they're confident will burn for a half hour, they can make a bracha on that. In other words, and so just to give sort of like a theoretical scenario, let's say you have some candles that are more reliable than others, and you have multiple people in the household who want to each make a bracha and light a menorah, which is as it should be. So the best thing to do is to make sure each of those people have 1 of the very reliable candles. And that should be the bracha. That should be actually the first candle you light when you make the bracha. So I hope yeah, here come the puns. I hope I shed some light on that issue. Okay, we're going to move on now. Next question, it's certainly a related question. And again, people should feel free to put questions in the chat. I'm just going to go through the submitted questions first, and then I'm sure we'll have another round of chat questions. Next question, is it necessary to buy oil candles, or is that just to make the mitzvah more muhadar? I hope it was clear from my last response. You are definitely yotzei with wax candles. It is a nicer form of the mitzvah to use oil, specifically olive oil. And the reason is because that is a recreation of what happened in the Beis HaMikdash. And that's why we're lighting the candles in the first place, to remember the miracle of the oil in the Beis HaMikdash. So you are definitely yotzei with wax candles, but it is a nicer thing, and it's specifically brought in halacha. It's not some new chumrah. It's a nicer thing to use oil candles. What I should be clear about is there's a world of difference between candles and electric lights. It's far from clear that you're yotzei with electric lights on Chanukah. And when people ask me the question, when they're in places that they can't light a candle or whatever it is, I tell them they shouldn't make a bracha on electric lights for Chanukah. So oil is the nicest. Wax is fine as long as it's going to burn for a half hour. And but electric, really, unless we really don't have any other option, we stay away from electric. But I would advise that even if a person doesn't have any other option, they could do electric, but they wouldn't make a bracha on it. Before we go on, I just want to touch on one more point. When we talk about a half hour, so the half hour means 2 things. The half hour means the candles should burn for a half hour, that the duration should be 30 minutes, but it also means that the candles should be burning for a half hour past past the time that it's definitely night. If I remember, I sent out in the cyber brief, thanks as always to Menashe's assistance, I sent out a review of the Halachos of Chanukah. I believe I put the time for lighting as 5:35, 5:35. I believe that's what I put. You could double check in the thing, but just assuming that for a second. So what that means is, if I light at 5:35, the candle should be able to burn until 6:05. If I light at 6 o'clock, the candle should be able to burn until 6:30. But here's the one I want to emphasize. If I light earlier than 5:35, the halacha is I can light as early as Plag HaMincha. I don't want to get into the details of when Plag HaMincha is. Plag HaMincha is sort of a checkpoint late in the halachic day. You could double check what I put in the cyber brief. I think I put the time for Plag HaMincha something like 3:50, something like that. But please double check. If I'm going away, I'm not going to be around at night, and I want to make sure to light Hanukkah candles. I don't want to forget. I don't want to whatever. It's all right for me to light earlier than 5:35, as long as it's sometime after 3:50. But this is the 2-rule part. If I'm lighting at 3:50, that's fine and well, but then the candles have to burn until 6:05. So there's 2 rules. The minimum duration of the burning is 30 minutes, and the candles have to burn, regardless of how long they burn for, at least until 6:05. Now, the scenario that's relevant for all of us is Friday night of Chanukah. So Friday night of Chanukah, we obviously we're not going to light at 5:35. That would definitely make our Friday night dinner guests uncomfortable because it's definitely Shabbos by that point. So basically, right before we light Shabbos candles, we light Hanukkah candles. Now, those Hanukkah candles that come in the box aren't going to last until 6:05 if you're lighting them at like 4:15 or 4:20 or something. That's not going to work. So what people normally do is either they use oil, and the oil can last for a very long time, generally speaking, or they use Shabbos candles as Hanukkah candles. Because Shabbos candles, your standard Shabbos candles can burn a very long time. But I want to be clear about something. What I mean by Shabbos candles is those products in the box marked Shabbos candles. You need to have Shabbos candles, as we light every Friday night, and separate from that is the mitzvah of the Hanukkah candles. Okay, I hope that was clear. So when we talk about 30 minutes, the candles only need burn 30 minutes if you lit it at 5:35 or later. If you lit it before 5:35, then you need to make sure the candles not only burn for 30 minutes, but burn at least until 6:05. Okay, one more thing about this whole 30-minute issue. It's a very, very common question. People are going out for the night. Okay, so they want to light Hanukkah candles as is appropriate. It's 5:35. They want to light Hanukkah candles, but then they're going to a family Hanukkah party. They're supposed to be at they're going to leave for the Hanukkah party at 6 o'clock. They want to light Hanukkah candles at home before they go, 5:35. Okay, they don't want to leave the house with candles burning and no one home. So what's their solution? So if they let the candles burn for a half hour, assuming they lit at 5:35 or later, if they let the candles burn for a half hour, they may then blow out the candles after a half hour has elapsed. It will be appropriate to have in mind when one is lighting the candles that one will be blowing out the candles. And then, truth be told, depending on the kind of candles you have, if, for example, you have like a cup of oil or something, if you blow it out after a half hour, you could easily relight it the next night and get at least a half hour of burning the next night. But if you're going to do that, it's appropriate to have in mind when you light the original candles that you very well might blow them out after a half hour. Okay. Okay, next question is a very, very common question. A wife sends in as follows. Should my husband wait until I get home, 10:30, 11 o'clock, or should he light on time and I light myself when I get home? So let's just paint the picture here. One member of the family is home at 5:35 or 6 or 7 or whatever it is, and another member of the family is coming home much, much later. Now, let's first talk about the member of the family who's coming home later. Okay. What's the story with this person lighting Hanukkah candles? So first of all, as a general rule, the mitzvah is that somebody should see your menorah. Somebody should see your menorah. I should just clarify, I mentioned it earlier tonight in Shul. Rabbeinu Zichrono Livracha used to say that if a person lives alone, we say that in our times, the mitzvah of publicizing the miracle is for the people of the household. If a person lives alone, then they need to see their menorah. And if they light a menorah, they fulfill the mitzvah. But in a situation where there's more than one person living in the household, the mitzvah is not only that I light the menorah, but I light the menorah in a way that someone else can see it. Now, we say today that the primary audience for our lighting of the candles should be the members of our household. Okay, but I do fulfill the mitzvah whether the member of my household sees it, whether someone else from the street sees it. Statement number one. So somebody comes home at 10:30 at night. So if their spouse, child, whoever is awake, they could say to their spouse, child, could you come over here? I want to light the menorah, and I want you to see me light the menorah. Or for that matter, I'm going to light the menorah now. Please come in 5 minutes to look at my menorah, whatever. And if there's even one person who's going to see their menorah, they can light the menorah with a bracha. Okay. Now, let's say nobody's home. Let's say everybody's asleep. Some of us are planning to go to a wedding, and there's actually, I know of at least 2 weddings in the community this Sunday, one in New York, one in New Jersey. Probably there's more. So various people have already asked me, they plan on coming home very late. So I plan on going to a wedding in New York this Sunday, God willing. So nobody else from my family is going. It's just me. I don't know what time I'm going to get home. And I'm going to be optimistic. I'm going to hope that my wife is actually asleep and that none of my children are keeping her up. That's what I'm hoping for. And I'm hoping that my children are asleep. Kain Yihi Ratzon, may it be the divine will. So in that case, so if I come home at, I don't know, 11 o'clock at night, I don't know. So on Clover Hill Drive, there's not many people driving around at 11 o'clock at night. I can't assume that someone on the street is going to see my menorah if I like that late. If someone in my household is awake, I could ask them to watch me light the menorah and I could make a bracha on that. But I don't know if they're going to be awake. So now what am I supposed to do when I get home? So what our plan in our home is to do is there's a fascinating halach in the context of the Chanukah candles, which is that because the nature of the mitzvah of Chanukah is on the household, one person can light on behalf of the household. And as long as that person has in mind to cover the members of the household in their obligation, and the other members have in mind to be yotze, to fulfill their obligation with this person's lighting, then all members of the household fulfill the mitzvah, even if they're not present at the time. So our plan, we've done this various times over the years, thank God, for Simchas Baruch Hashem many times. If I'm out and about at some out-of-town Simcha, I just ask a Tara, do me a favor, when you light, please have in mind that you're being motzi me with the mitzvah. And I'll have in mind to be yotze with you. And halachically speaking, it's as if I lit with a bracha. So much so, I just want to share this because, again, people have been asking, so I'll share it in this context. What's the unique bracha we make on the first night of Chanukah? Shechianu. I notice when I mute everyone, there's not as much participation when I ask questions. Okay, so we make a shechianu on the first night of Chanukah. Now, once we made the shechianu on the first night of Chanukah, we don't make a shechianu the rest of the nights of Chanukah. Let's say a person forgot to make shechianu on the first night of Chanukah. What does a person do the second night of Chanukah? They make a shechianu, right? So the halacha is, if I'm living vicariously through my wife's lighting, even though I don't hear her brachos, even though I'm not present when she's lighting, it's as if I made the shechianu the first night of Chanukah. It's a very interesting thing. So I just wanted to start with that scenario, just to keep in mind, if the spouse who's coming home late expects that the other spouse or other members of the household will already be asleep and no one will be awake, unless they live on a street that they're confident that at the time that they'll be lighting, people will be driving up and down the street, they should not plan to be yotze when they came home. They should ask their spouse who's going to be home at an earlier time to have them in mind when they light. But let's assume that the other spouse is going to be awake when the later spouse comes home. Okay? So now the question is as follows. Should the spouse who's home anyway light at the standard time for lighting, 5:35? Or should they wait until their spouse comes home and they'll light together at 11 o'clock at night? Okay? The bottom line is, whatever you do, there's who to rely on in this case. Okay? The other way to say it is, whatever you do, somebody says you're wrong. But we're going to try to be optimistic here. So here's the story. The sort of by the book answer is that it makes sense for the spouse who's home to light at the proper time. It's a big mitzvah. There's all these halachos about not doing other things until you light Chanukah candles, because we're worried a person will forget to light the Chanukah candles. So for those reasons, that it's ideal to light the Chanukah candles at Tzeis HaKochavim, because that's the time in the Gemara's times when people are coming home from the marketplace. So for those reasons, it would be ideal to light at the standard time, as long as someone's going to see your menorah, right? Whether it be that there's a member of your household who's home, whether it be that you're lighting in a place that you have a window or something that people from the outside will see you. If no one's going to see your menorah if you light at 5:35, it's a terrible idea to light at 5:35. It's a very bad idea. You should wait until your spouse gets home and then someone will see your menorah. But assuming that people will see your menorah, the by the book answer would be for the one spouse to light at 5:35, the other spouse to light at 11 o'clock. But there is a counter argument, and the counter argument is, well, we just got finished saying that the primary publicizing of the miracle is for the members of the household. Wouldn't it be a nice thing to light menorah with the members of your household present? And it's nice, we light menorah together. So really, either way is all right. I should mention that if a person is going to hold off on lighting the menorah, there really are halachic issues with eating supper, for example. Certainly, if they were going to eat bread or mazonos, there's even issues with, let's say, going to a shiur or something, unless someone has some built-in reminder to light the menorah. So the reminder could be setting an alarm, for 11 o'clock at night on their phone. The reminder could be putting a note on their pillow, menorah. It could be even the reminder is the fact that their spouse comes home. That's like an external factor. But if I'm not mistaken, I think the story is told about Reb Nachumka, who was the Rebbe of the Chafetz Chaim. Is either told about the Chafetz Chaim or his Rebbe. I think that somebody was in his home, and he wanted to see his holy Rebbe light the Chanukah menorah. So he figured out what time was nightfall, and he made sure to be there. And he's sitting there, and the Rebbe is in no rush whatsoever. He doesn't understand this precious mitzvah. And then, if I'm not getting the story wrong, I think he couldn't figure it out, and then finally understood that the Rebbe's wife was taking a nap, and the Rebbe didn't want to wake up his wife, or the Rebbe's wife was out, or something like that. And he said, "Listen, I'll wait. The shalom bayis is also important. So it's an interesting." Okay, I hope I answered that question clearly. Okay, this is a really great question and a very common question. I've been invited to candle lighting at a family member's house Sunday evening, the first night of Chanukah. So what am I supposed to light at the Chanukah party? Am I not supposed to light the Chanukah party? Should I only light at home? Should I also light at home? Should I not light at home? What's the story? So we already mentioned in passing that the nature of the mitzvah of Chanukah is in one's home. That's where there's a mitzvah to light Chanukah candles. So really, that's the mitzvah. So if you invite me to your home for a dinner or a party or something like that in honor of Chanukah, that's really nice and that's really, really lovely and special, but I really should not fulfill my mitzvah of Chanukah candles at your house. And to be candid, I would say if a person lit Chanukah candles at someone else's house just for the evening, they're not even yotzei with that. And they need to relight when they get home. Now, they certainly shouldn't be making a bracha on that lighting, at someone else's house. And when they come home, they should light. Now, the person has a few options based on what we've already discussed. The person could light at home before they go to the Chanukah party. If no one is staying home and they don't want to leave candles burning, they would wait a half hour. As long as they lit at 5:35 or later, they would wait a half hour and then blow out the candles and then go to the Chanukah party. That was one option. Another option is to go to the Chanukah party and then light at home when they get home, right? If they do that, they need to be sure of two things. They need to be sure there's going to be someone at home or on the street who will see their menorah when they light at the later time. And they also should have some kind of built-in reminder for themselves to not forget to light menorah, right? And then the third option is to light really early. In other words, maybe they need to leave for the Chanukah party by 5 o'clock. So the third option would be to light really early but make sure the candles are long enough or have enough oil in them to burn until 6:05. The order in which I stated these options would be their order of preference, but all of them would be valid and viable options. So the ideal thing would be to light at home at the standard time. The secondary thing would be to light at home later that night, as long as someone is sure that the menorah will be seen. The third option would be if that makes a person nervous or whatever it is, third option would be to light at home earlier, let the candles burn a long time. Now, I should clarify one point. I keep on saying that the mitzvah of Chanukah is to light in my home and not in your home. There's a very important exception to that rule, which is if I'm away from home. So we hope to go away for Shabbos Chanukah. We have to go to Baltimore for Shabbos Chanukah, God willing. So where am I supposed to light? Where am I supposed to light Friday afternoon? So I mean, it's not, the timing won't work out for me to light at home. It's not, I don't think so. So my home for that Shabbos, my temporary home for that Shabbos is in Baltimore. So in that circumstance, it's all right for me to light there. If I'm sleeping over somewhere, I can light there. Then there's a whole question. Does it make more, if I'm sleeping in one place and eating in another place? So which one is the primary place? Is it the place that I sleep? Is it the place that I eat? That really depends on the nuance of someone's specific circumstances. So we could leave that for people's own questions privately. Let's not have a whole battery of questions about that. I don't think so. But if it's just that I'm going to your house for supper, and you're 15 minutes away from me, and I'm going to your house for supper, so then really I need to be lighting at my home that night. I hope that made sense. Okay. Okay, sort of a follow-up question to that is, the Hanukkah party is at 7. Okay, so I'm going to be home at 5:35, and I'm going to light at 5:35. It's going to burn for a half hour. I'm going to blow them out, or maybe they'll just burn into whatever. And then I'm going to the Hanukkah party, and everyone's lighting at the Hanukkah party. Now, I was Yotzei the mitzvah in the place that I should be Yotzei the mitzvah at my home, and I made a bracha then. I was Yotzei, I'm done. Is there a problem with me lighting the menorah a second time at your home without a bracha, just to fit in? So I don't think there's a problem with that. I think that's just fine. And the candle industry would encourage you to do so. Okay, that's that. Okay, I need to give a disclaimer before I share this next question. I am not speaking to the safety or wisdom of questions are not necessarily approved by this program. So the question that was submitted is, may I light candles on a train in the window? Okay. On a practical level, I think I would discourage it. On a safety level, on a Chilul Hashem level, besides that, I certainly wouldn't want to do it unless I got the express permission of the conductor. And I'm pretty skeptical I would get the express permission of the conductor. But I will answer it on a theoretical level for the sake of the concept of it. But practically speaking, I personally would discourage you from doing so. And if a person asks me lahalacha, may they light on a train in the window? I personally would say, trying to look at halacha in a holistic way, that it's usher, that it's prohibited to do so unless they get specific permission from the people who run the train, and don't hold your breath on that one. Now, but let's just say, theoretically speaking, if they were to provide permission. So if it's like an overnight train or something, it's probably not crazy to think of the train as sort of my temporary place. And then it's sort of akin to lighting in the place that I sleep over for Shabbos. So it wouldn't be a crazy idea. But again, having said that, I don't think it's practical, nor do I think it's appropriate, nor perhaps safe. So what would I practically tell a person who's taking a train? By the way, just to be a little bit more, I'd be very surprised if not someone out there who has this shaila. It's a very common shaila. A person's taking a flight to Israel at some point over Chanukah, and they need to leave for the airport before 3:50, And by the time their plane lands in Israel, it's daytime, So in that situation, I would say it's beyond your control. Now, ideally, if there's anybody from your family who's home in your home that night, do like what I said I was going to do for the Sunday night wedding. Just ask a family member to light at your home with you in mind if they live there. That's ideal. That's l'chatchila. And if no one from the house is going to be home, then I would say it's beyond your control. You're in circumstances that you can't fulfill the mitzvah. That's the story. You could turn on an electric light. Rabbi Amos Zechron Bracha said this to many people. They could, whether it be to turn on the light, over your seat in the plane, or a flashlight, or whatever it is, whether it be turn it on for a few moments, whether it be you maybe turn it on for a whole half hour. I wouldn't make a bracha on that, but you can have in mind that that's for Chanukah. Okay, that exhausts the submitted questions. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the chat. Thank you, Elaine, for that first chat. Fully agreed. I'm going to pass on publicizing that. Thank you for sharing. Oh, you should feel well. Okay. I think I answered that. Yeah, thank you for making that comment, Menashe, about the early mincha. Let me talk about that for a second, because I think people get confused about it sometimes. There is a preference in halacha, not an obligation, but a preference in halacha in the situation where a person is lighting early on Friday, which of course we're all going to light early on Friday, to daven mincha before one lights Chanukah candles. The reason why that's a preference is Chanukah candles is like a nighttime type of thing, and mincha is a daytime type of thing. So it's sort of like mixing up your order a little bit if you light Chanukah candles first. Having said that, it's not an obligation. We make in the shul a Friday afternoon mincha, and that's great. But just a specific question that people ask sometimes: if a person has to decide between davening privately Friday afternoon before they light candles, or davening with a minyan Friday afternoon after they light candles, I would recommend the minyan after they light candles. So, thank you. Okay, so somebody submitted a comment to me about Friday night and tea lights and Shabbos candles. So first of all, just on a practical level, let me take a step back. My guess is many of us are aware of this, but people always seem a little bit surprised. Even though we talk about the menorah, and the Beis Hamikdash, of course, had a menorah, you do not have to have your candles in a menorah for Hanukkah. You need to have your candles lit, and any night after the first night, if you're lighting the number of nights that it is, you need to have them clearly arranged with each other. But for example, if I had tea lights, if Friday night, I think it's the sixth night of Hanukkah, I think, if I had tea lights, and I just lined up 6 tea lights in a row on a tray, and they clearly were a unit together, I'm Yotzei Chanukah just fine with 6 tea lights lined up next to each other. They don't have to be part of a formal menorah. So people frequently are a little flustered and how to do the candlesticks and the this and the that. So it was, I appreciate, Menashe made the point, I appreciate it. So tea lights work very well for that. I totally agree with Menashe about that. Okay. Okay. You know what? So I'm a little worried I'm going to confuse people. Someone submitted a very specific question about lighting with an elderly parent. I'm a little bit worried I'm going to confuse people if I answer this publicly. So if I could just ask you, let's talk about it offline if you don't mind. Okay, let's connect. Okay, before I take any more questions or comments, we'll just close with a Menashe joke. Is it all right to blow out candles on Hanukkah if your birthday is on Hanukkah? So the truth is, Menashe, if it's birthday candles, the candles don't have to be made for Hanukkah. They don't have to burn for a half hour, and I would discourage usage of oil. But thank you. Thank you, Menashe, for that. Okay, At this point, I'm happy to open up the questions if anyone wants to call out any questions or chat in any more questions. Okay. I apologize that my own personal family obligations postponed what we were going to have a while ago. We were going to have something about koshering and toveling utensils, which, if I'm not mistaken, Miriam, is our plan for the next class, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So God willing, stay tuned. You're muted, Miriam. So I don't know what you're.
Sorry, no, I know I'm like trying to. Yeah, we have to pick a date, but it'll be sometime in January toward the end of the month.
Okay, God
on a
willing.
Tuesday.
Sounds
and
good.
It's koshering and toveling utensils.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Okay, I want to wish everybody happy Hanukkah. Obviously, if anyone has any follow-up questions, please feel free to call or email or however it's good. Okay, have a wonderful night, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Miriam, and thank you all the people who submitted questions.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.